Christian Horner's sudden exit from Red Bull has already sent shockwaves through Formula One. But here's where things get really interesting, because with Ferrari reportedly circling, one tantalizing possibility is emerging that could change everything for Lewis Hamilton. Imagine this: Horner, the architect of Red Bull's dominance, joining forces with Hamilton in Maranello, just as Lewis begins what could be the most consequential chapter of his career. On paper, it sounds irresistible. Hamilton looking to add a historic 8th title with Ferrari, and Horner bringing the experience, strategic sharpness and ruthless edge that defined Red Bull's success. But there's a catch, and Martin Brundle has pinpointed it. Horner won't settle for just any role. Christian will be desperate to have a stake in a team going forward, Brundle noted, implying that Horner isn't simply looking for a team principal seat. He wants influence, ownership and control. Ferrari, with its rigid corporate structure and deep ties to Italy's industrial establishment, simply doesn't offer that. So while the headlines scream Horner to Ferrari, the real intrigue is whether Horner and Hamilton's ambitions could truly align, and where. Could we see them form a power duo, not in Maranello, but elsewhere? Is there a scenario where Horner uses his freedom to shape a new project around Hamilton's final championship push? If Horner craves ownership, and Hamilton craves legacy, this could set the stage for one of the most fascinating alliances in modern Formula One. Technically speaking, the prospect of Christian Horner teaming up with Lewis Hamilton raises fascinating strategic questions, especially if such a partnership were to materialise at Ferrari, a team still searching for operational cohesion after years of underachievement. Under Horner's leadership, Red Bull mastered not just aerodynamic superiority, but also the delicate interplay between aggressive race strategy, tyre degradation management, and driver psychology, precisely the areas where Ferrari has faltered most. Imagine Horner applying that same ruthless attention to detail at Maranello, unlocking performance for Hamilton that has eluded him even in his most promising Ferrari tests so far. But there's more at stake than simply fixing pit stop timings or optimizing tyre windows. Horner's Red Bull tenure was defined by an intricate relationship between engineering leadership and team politics. He worked seamlessly with Adrian Newey to exploit every millimetre of aerodynamic regulation while managing the high-pressure environment around Max Verstappen. That expertise would be critical for Hamilton, especially as he faces the challenges of adapting to Ferrari's notoriously tricky chassis dynamics and braking balance, particularly on high degradation circuits like Barcelona and Suzuka. However, Horner's reported desire for equity complicates the scenario. Ferrari is a team deeply embedded within the Fiat Group, a publicly traded corporate giant where ownership stakes are not offered lightly. Would Horner really invest his future in an organisation where he couldn't shape its DNA, particularly in support of Hamilton's quest for an 8th world title? Or does this suggest another possibility entirely? That Horner's ambitions might align better with an alternative project, perhaps a revitalised Alpine or a new entrant where he could build a structure around Hamilton's remaining championship window. The strategic permutations here are as complex as the tyre degradation curves Ferrari struggles to manage. Beyond the technical intrigue, the human dimension of a Horner-Hamilton partnership is where this story truly comes alive, because the chemistry between two of F1's most competitive personalities would define not just their results, but their legacy. For Hamilton, the move to Ferrari was always about more than machinery. It was about history, redemption, and cementing an 8th title in scarlet red. But to succeed, he would need more than just a fast car. He would need a leadership figure who understands how to galvanise an entire team around a singular goal, something Fred Vasseur has struggled to achieve under immense political pressure from Maranello and the Italian media. Enter Christian Horner, whose management style, sharp, politically astute, unapologetically combative, could offer Hamilton the structure and ruthlessness he requires. Yet this potential partnership carries deep psychological complexity. The last time Hamilton and Horner were on opposite sides of the fence, their rivalry defined an era. The bitterness of 2021 lingers, and behind closed doors, there are questions about whether they could truly bury the hatchet and trust one another in this critical final chapter of Hamilton's career. Would Horner see Hamilton as a championship asset, or a short-term fix to restore Ferrari's reputation? Would Hamilton accept Horner's notorious intensity and tight control after years of working with the comparatively hands-off Toto Wolff? And what about the Ferrari organisation itself? Would it truly empower Horner to manage the team his way, including decisions about supporting Hamilton unequivocally over Charles Leclerc? The personal stakes are immense. For Hamilton, this could be the partnership that redefines his place in history. For Horner, it could be the opportunity to prove that his leadership magic transcends Red Bull, but only if both men are willing to trust completely, a tall order after years of fierce rivalry. In cold championship mathematics, a Horner-Hamilton partnership would immediately reshape the balance of power at the sharp end of the constructors' and drivers' standings. Hamilton's move to Ferrari alone already signals a shift in the competitive landscape for 2026, but with Horner potentially overseeing the operation, the equation changes dramatically. Under Horner's leadership, Red Bull consistently maximised points hauls, even when not the fastest car on track, exploiting every strategic nuance. Alternate pit windows, tyre compound advantages, virtual safety car timings, to convert marginal gains into tangible championship leads. That efficiency is exactly what Ferrari has lacked, as their 2025 season so far illustrates. Close on raw pace, but hemorrhaging points through poor execution. If Horner joined forces with Hamilton, Ferrari's delta to Red Bull and McLaren in terms of operational effectiveness could shrink almost overnight, transforming them from outsiders into title contenders. For Hamilton, this is critical. At 40 years old, by the time the 2026 regulations come into force, his margin for error and wasted seasons is almost gone. Every race must count, every point maximised. Could Horner deliver the operational precision Hamilton requires to mount a final, credible 8th title challenge? Or would the cultural and political inertia inside Ferrari blunt even Horner's sharpest tools? The permutations are fascinating. Ferrari with Hamilton alone is a wild card. Ferrari with Hamilton and Horner becomes a potential points machine, capable of outscoring Red Bull and McLaren across an entire season. The math suggests a championship window opening. But for how long? To fully grasp what a Horner-Hamilton alliance would mean, we need to look at the historical context, because Formula One is littered with moments when the right leader and the right driver converged to define an era. Think of Jean Todt's arrival at Ferrari in the mid-1990s and his alliance with Michael Schumacher. It wasn't just Schumacher's brilliance that transformed Ferrari into an unstoppable force. It was Todd's methodical restructuring, political savvy, and insistence on absolute unity behind a single driver that delivered 5 straight world titles. The parallels here are striking. Ferrari is again a giant in search of order, and Hamilton stands in a similar position to Schumacher, a champion willing to carry the team's hopes but needing the right leadership infrastructure to do it. Horner, much like Todd, is a proven operator. A man who built an empire at Red Bull from scratch, shepherding both Vettel and Verstappen to multiple titles. But there's a twist. Horner and Hamilton's rivalry over the last decade has been one of the defining narratives of the sport. Their 2021 clash, in particular, cemented their relationship as one of fierce competitors rather than potential allies. That would make this potential partnership all the more historic. 2 adversaries uniting for a final, defining push at the sport's most iconic team. And history matters at Ferrari. The team thrives on symbolism and legacy as much as engineering. Could Horner and Hamilton write a chapter to rival Schumacher and Todd? Or would the weight of Ferrari's history itself prove too heavy, pulling them apart before they can truly transform Maranello into a title-winning machine again? Looking ahead, the potential implications of a Horner-Hamilton alliance stretch far beyond 2026. For Ferrari, this wouldn't just be a change of personnel. It would represent a strategic reinvention at the most critical juncture in modern Formula One. The 2026 regulations promise to fundamentally reshape car design, with an emphasis on a more balanced power unit formula and greater energy recovery complexity. Success under these rules will depend not just on raw aerodynamic expertise, but on a team's ability to interpret and exploit regulation grey areas, a Horner specialty. For Hamilton, it would offer an opportunity to align with a leader who understands exactly how to game this system to its limits, just as Red Bull did through their ground effect mastery when the current regulations began in 2022. Together, Horner and Hamilton could define Ferrari's technical direction for years, ensuring that Maranello maximizes its development curve precisely when the sport undergoes its next competitive reset. But there's another layer here. Their partnership could also accelerate wider shifts in the competitive hierarchy, putting immense pressure on Mercedes, McLaren, and even Red Bull to respond. Could Red Bull retain Verstappen if Horner is now galvanizing Ferrari around Hamilton? Would Mercedes be forced into a strategic rethink to avoid falling behind as their former star driver helps revive their old rivals? In the fiercely political world of Formula One, this wouldn't just be about winning races. It would be about rewriting the balance of power across the entire grid. In the long term, a Christian Horner-Lewis-Hamilton partnership at Ferrari would have consequences that transcend any one season or championship. For Hamilton, it would crystallize his reputation as not just a 7-time world champion, but as a driver willing to take extraordinary risks in pursuit of history. A champion who left the comfort and familiarity of Mercedes to resurrect Formula One's most storied team at the twilight of his career. If he and Horner could deliver an 8th title together, especially at Ferrari, it would not simply break records. It would redefine greatness itself, sealing Hamilton's legacy as the driver who succeeded where many, including Alonso and Vettel, ultimately fell short. For Horner, this move would mark a reinvention, a chance to prove that his leadership genius was not merely a product of the Red Bull environment, but a transferable, transformative skill that could unlock performance at even the most politically complex team in the sport's history. Beyond individual legacies, their potential alliance would ripple across Formula One's competitive structure for a decade or more, altering driver markets, technical talent recruitment, and even sponsorship dynamics. And at Ferrari, it could signal the dawn of a new cultural era, one in which the team finally breaks free from the internal divisions and operational inertia that have kept it from the top step of the podium for so long. Together, Horner and Hamilton could reshape not just Ferrari, but the entire competitive DNA of Formula One.